Welcome back, and in today's video we're going to cover 7 brutal checkmates that you need to master on your journey to 2000 ELO. So we're going to start with Boden's mate, the classic Boden's mate. In this position, black is one mistake away from being checkmated in 2 moves. So looks like a normal position. If black was to castle queenside, we have the classic Boden's mate, which is queen takes c6, and after b takes we have bishop takes a6 checkmate. Now the reason this one works is the bishops crisscross the king, and the king is blocked in by the rook and the knight. And this, if you take a look at this setup here, this is all that's needed for Boden's mate to work. So every time your opponent castles queenside, keep an eye out. If that pawn moves to c6, you always have sacrifice options to pull off Boden's mate. All right, sacrifice number 2. Anastasia's mate. This is one of my personal favorites. In this position, white has mate in 4, knight to e7, check. The king slides across. You can see all of these checkmates involve sacrifices. In this case, black's king is essentially back rank, stuck on the back rank, but it's not the back rank, it's the H file. The queen comes in, queen sacrifice, and then the rook slides across, checkmating the king on the H file. In this case, black has one move, block the check, and this is checkmate. And if you want to see how effective Anastasia's mate can be in a real game, check out this position. It looks pretty normal, but white has this killer move, knight to d5, attacking the queen. The queen drops back, and you can see the pattern. Knight to e7, the king slides across. Black's only chance was to sacrifice the queen, but white just is a queen up for a knight in that position, so it's winning, and we pull off the same checkmating pattern. Okay, number 3. This one doesn't always lead to a checkmate, but it always leads to a winning advantage. I've fallen for this before and it's so painful. In this position, white sacrifices the rook on f6, crippling black's pawn structure. Now black's got a crippled pawn structure, and the idea is simple. The queen's going to jump to g4 and deliver checkmate on g7, either with the bishop supporting or with the knight supporting on f5. And also, it's just, we've created a very beautiful square, beautiful outpost for our knight here. So we're going to play bishop to h6 here, and black cannot move the rook because of checkmate. So instead, black is going to move the king out of the way. And now black's defensive idea is rook to g8 if the white queen jumped to g4. So here, white is just going to win back the exchange, and after rook to f1, white just has a very winning position. White's idea is very simple. Queen will jump to h5, the knight will jump to f5, the rook is going to slide across to h3, and essentially with the queen and rook combo, white's going to either deliver a checkmate on h7, or black is going to have to give up a lot of material. And just this pawn structure here cuts off all of black's forces on the wrong side of the board, and white just has a winning position in this case. And now we move to checkmate number 4, one of the most famous and beautiful checkmates in chess, Smothered mate. Queen to b3, attacking the open exposed king on this diagonal. The king cannot jump to f8 because of queen f7 checkmate. So the king is forced into the corner, and from here we simply play knight to f7 check. The king slides across. Knight h6. The king jumps back into the corner. And queen to g8. Absolute hammer. Queen sacrifice. The rook has to take it. Knight f7, smothered, checkmate. There we go. The king is smothered. This is one of the most classic and famous checkmates in chess, or checkmating patterns. It's a mate in 5 that you sort of need to memorize. And as you can see, the key thing is an exposed diagonal here with the king, and a knight either on g5 or e5, depending on the position. Always keep an eye out for checks along this exposed diagonal. So now we've got 3 more to go, and I've left the best for last. So if you've watched so far, you're in for a treat. This next one happens a lot in the Sicilian, or just in general when your opponent has castled queenside. It just so happens white castles queenside in the Sicilian a lot, and it goes like this. Knight to c3. So in this case, we are immediately, this is what you'll see in your games, we are either winning the exchange if white decides to not take the knight for whatever reason. In this case, white is forced to take it because going anywhere else will lead to checkmate. So for instance, that is checkmate, and king to c1 doesn't lead to much better results for white either. So in this case, white is going to take it, and now we take back with the b pawn. The idea of the sacrifice is we open the b file. So here, something like king to c1 leads to checkmate with queen to a3, and king to a1, you want to always play something like rook to b2 because we're going to checkmate white on a2. We're not going to simply just win the queen, we're going to win the king. Last but not least, if the white knight drops back, we are going to take the queen, and we're just up in material. This knight cannot take our queen because it is pinned. So always keep this knight to c3 sacrifice in your back pocket at all times, particularly when you are attacking your opponent who is castled queenside. And just super quickly, if you're finding this video useful, there are over 100 videos like this one on my channel, so subscribe and check out the other ones. Drop a like on this one, and if you're interested, check out my website. There's a link in the description below. Okay, so this one, second to last, this one is called the Greek gift. And it comes from these types of positions where you have your bishop pointing this way, your knight's about to jump in. Everything looks safe. However, black does not have a bishop covering that g5 square. That's the key thing about these positions. And what you want to do here is bishop takes h7. The king is going to take, because if the king doesn't take, you can always drop your bishop back, worst case, and you've just won a critical pawn. Knight to g5 check. And now the king has... It looks like the king's got a few squares, but let's just break it down. If the king jumps back to h8, we simply have mate in 2. So that's not going to work. So what happens if the king drops to g8? Same thing happens. Black can't really protect against checkmate. Black's best move is actually sacrificing the queen here. So that leaves black with two choices. King to h6, which falls to knight takes f7 check, double check, or knight takes e6, either way, and white is going to win that queen on the next move. And so that leaves black with, really, out of the 4 options, there's only one good move, and this is the critical move in these positions. So you have to be careful here. This is the very key moment. 2 moves, either queen to d3 check or queen to g4 check. Either one works, but you just have to analyze in your particular game which one is better, which one is going to have the tactics work for it. In this case, we'll play queen check, and again, the king can't go here because of the discovered check, and it's not much better if the king jumps here because we play queen to h3 check and queen h7 checkmate. So you might be thinking, okay, what can black do in that case? Well, the key move here is f5 for black, blocking that check. And again, the very final move you have to remember, the queen slides across to g3, and we have all sorts of discovered checks that we're threatening here. If black plays something like f4, we can always just take the pawn, or again, you'll just have to see how the tactics work in your particular game. But this leads to a monstrous attack out of nowhere. Again, it starts from a pretty normal position. It's called the Greek gift. It's pretty technical, so that's why I've sort of left it second to last, but it's one of the most effective if you can just check and make sure that your tactics work out in your particular game. Now, this last sacrifice or checkmating pattern starts with these types of Caro-Kann type situations where you've got or your opponent has a pawn on e6, a pawn on f7, and in this particular position, white has just played queen to e2. So you can kind of see pressure is piling up on these 2 pawns. Black might make the mistake bishop to e7. Normal move, black is thinking they're going to castle, doesn't look like there's much danger, but in these types of positions, these are really fun. Even if it's not a checkmate immediately, it leads to some wild games. Knight takes f7. Here we are forking the queen and the rook. We're just literally going to win a whole rook if black's not careful. So the black king is going to take, but now we take queen takes e6. If the king drops to f8 or e8, we're going to play queen to f7 checkmate. So the king is forced to jump out onto g6. The bishop drops back to d3 with a check. The king has to go here because the other bishop, look at these bishops. The king has to go to h5, and we just drop the queen back. queen to h3 checkmate. And let's just take a few steps back just to show you a couple more things. In these types of positions, black always wants to have that bishop protecting the pawn, so black should play something like knight to b6, attacking the bishop and defending that pawn. So keep an eye out for black's defensive maneuvers in these positions as well, because sometimes you might be black and your opponent's attacking you. One more position where this is quite common is in Sicilian type defenses. Again, whoops, not these two pawns. You see the same pawn structure, and if the bishop is on c4 and the knight on d4, which is very common in the Sicilian, you should always look for things like this. So the bishop will take, the pawn will take back, the knight will jump in, attacking the queen and the g7 pawn. The queen, might jump to a5, and here we would take on g7 and just drop the knight back to f5. Here we've won 1, 2, 3 pawns for our bishop. Again, it's not an immediate checkmate here, but it's such a beautiful sacrifice. We've got all our material back in the form of pawns. Black's king is exposed, and this is going to lead to a beautiful, exciting fight. Black's pieces aren't really developed that well either, so white has all the chances in the world to win this game, or at least play a very exciting game. So there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. 7 brutal checkmates to master. Each one of these involves a piece sacrifice. I hope you enjoyed that. Check out the other videos on the channel. There's so many more videos like this. Like I said, over 100 now. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Peace out.